Is it possible for a freestyle skater to clean up at a street contest by doing a little freestyle routine in there? I don't know. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel all about skateboarding and answering your questions from all corners of the skateboarding world. I've got a handful of questions from you guys. The first one is from Saltukius, who says, hey Rad Rat, not sure if you've covered something like this before. Session is breaking away as one of the most realistic skateboarding sims we've had so far, but it's obviously not 100% realistic. There's been a lot of speculation or spitballing of what kind of features would be cool in the future, some of which are reasonable and have high potential, while others might be a bit much. Things like your board wearing down, eventually breaking, having to wax a ledge would be cool. Heard people even suggest random pebbles that make you fall, dealing with injuries, which could be frustrating. My question to you is, if you had an unlimited budget to make the absolute pinnacle of skateboarding sims, where do you think the tipping point would be for has science gone too far moment? Where do you sacrifice realism for the sake of gameplay? Well, Session has little pebbles, they're just not on purpose. Like sometimes your wheel will just sink into the ground and you'll bail for no reason. That game still needs some work. I greatly enjoy it, but it still needs some work. So I would want a realistic game, but idealized. So like I would not want rocks. Having to wax up anything you would like to grind would not be that fun either. Or like having a dry spot. You haven't waxed it very long, or it feels like a shared online world, and you have like people always start like a crooked grind right here, and so this spot has like a little chip, and like you're trying to do a blunt slide and you catch on this dry spot because all the wax is gone right there. Like that kind of thing doesn't sound fun to me. And that would be a reason why I wouldn't do it. You know, like I want it to be a fun skateboarding experience. Things that I do want that are not in Session is I would want to be able to do like a late 360 flip or a late hard flip or a late spin and flip. You can do a late shove or late flips. You can't do them combined. Having your board or your clothes like wear down and get holes in it, I would like that, I think, because it forces you to change out your board, change your character's clothes. If I'm not forced to, I generally don't do it. You know, like if you've watched me play skate in any of my series, I do eventually switch up my clothes and stuff because you get more sponsor. Like if you're wearing your sponsor's gear and stuff, that's like good for the game. So that's a reason to make you change your clothes. If your stuff gets broken down or your shoe blows out and you got to get new ones, if there's enough choices, it'd be kind of cool to be, you know, to constantly, it'd be more of a realistic thing. You are never dressed exactly the same. So I would be okay with that. What other notes do I have? And it would also be cool if you were switching out your gear, if boards worked differently. If the amount of concave and the steepness of the tails and stuff like that affected the way that the skating felt. That would be a tough thing to balance, because right now in Session you can go into the settings, you can change the flip speed, you can change the ollie height, you can do stuff like that, like a stats type of thing. But if every board you picked was a little bit different, and instead of changing stats you could get boards that worked a certain way, that could be kind of fun. It could be annoying. It'd be good to be able to turn it off if it didn't work well for you. But that would be good. Another thing that we really need, in my opinion, is a fear factor. And I don't mean of the Joe Rogan variety.
Now that is why I'm the host of Fear Factor.
I mean like a reason why you can't just wind up and do a 540 triple kickflip downstairs. Because even if it's physically possible to do that, no one does it, because you can't do something you can't do a trick for the first time down 15 stairs. You know, like you have to have some confidence going into a trick that you're going to be consistent enough to be able to do it. And I just don't know how you make that work in a video game. The only thing that I've seen come close to it is an Amped, which is a snowboarding game, Amped 2 specifically, which you can see me review right here. And the way they do that is by having the points count better with style and not with speed. So if you're about to hit this drop and you wind up and you spin super fast the whole way, and then you like stop dead and then you land, you're not going to get points at all. You're going to get like nothing for that. But if you like wind up and you do like a really slow 540 and you have this nice tweaked out grab and you finish up the spin right as you land, you don't have to like stop in the air and like twist at the last second. You know, it's like realistic physics. That's when you get a ton of points. So like, while there's no reason your character isn't scared of doing a crazy spin, it just doesn't benefit you as the player. So if there's a way to do something like that, I think that is what is really needed. Like that's the last real step before a sim is really a sim. The next question is from Julian, who says, if you were a pro making a video with your team, what would be your dream ender? Any trick at any spot, it still has to be realistically possible. First thing that came to mind is PJ Ladd's front nose blunt, which I should be able to pull a clip of. If not, he just has this long nose blunt on a ledge. But I'm thinking tray flip in, nollie flip out. Should be possible. It would be crazy. But just to do something that's highly technical like that, but have a long slide in the middle, I think that would be super cool. I don't know why that's the first thing that came to mind. Like it's not like that's been my dream trick forever or anything like that, but it's just the first thing I thought of. And I think it would be really cool to just mix like speed and tech in that type of way. I don't know. I think that'd be a cool one. All right. The next question is from Drake, who says, this is a short question and someone else might have already asked this, but how did you come up with your logo? Have a great day. I might join the channel soon. So my logo was supposed to be like a 1980s type of thing. And if you look up graphics from the 80s, there's a lot of triangles and there's like grids. There's a lot of pink and teal. I didn't want to rip off the colors because anyone who does like a 1980s style thing does pink and teal. And so I didn't do that. And I picked some different colors, but it was just like a hand-drawn sort of characters that are just kind of sharp. And I don't know, it was going to be like a 1980s thing. And I had a lot of other things that I was going to do with the branding that I ended up not doing because it wasn't a good idea. At one point, I was going to have, every time I showed a clip, it was going to be on like a TV, and I was going to have like a TV appear, and I was going to like curve the clip slightly so it looked like it was on this old school TV, and like the corners would be curved out and stuff like that, and then do effects on it to make it look like it was playing on a tape type of thing. And I had this all planned out. I was going to do it, and like it doesn't look good. But yeah, I was just going for a specific theme, and I had all these background graphics and different, things I was going to do. And when my name pops up in the corner, that was all going to be a certain way. And so, yeah, it's just inspired by things from the 80s, because that was when I first started the channel. It was going to be a lot of 80s skateboarding discussions, mostly history type stuff. And I don't do as much of that right now. And so like, it's kind of weird to have an 80s themed thing without talking about the 80s that much, but that was the original thought process. The next question is from Sam. I was watching Felipe Nunes during the Tampa Pro. Got me thinking about how judging his run would work from a scoring perspective, given that the way he does his tricks is so unique to him. Would his tricks get scored generally higher since he has to perform everything sitting down, which would make the tricks harder? Would certain tricks be scored lower since a kickflip would be more like a finger flip for him? Or is it a more egalitarian approach where all of his tricks are scored the same as a skater who rides standing up and his disability isn't considered as a factor? If you were a judge, how would you go about factoring a skater's disability with their score? Or should their disability not be considered a factor despite the extra level of difficulty and skill it would require? If you want to see some of his skating, he has a part on Thrasher called Limitless. And I'm sure you've seen his skating before. He's the guy who skates with his hands and he jumps and does flips this way. That part is crazy. It was really exciting to watch. And like, there's a lot to consider if you were to judge him against different skaters. Now, just to watch his part, you don't have to compare him to anybody. You can just watch the part and be excited and, stoked about seeing the stuff that he does. But in a contest, there's no way to not directly compare. That's the whole point. So like, what would I do in that type of situation? His skating is so much different. So like, if he were to do a kickflip manual on a pad, like, I would imagine getting up and doing the flip would be harder, but the balance might not be as hard, because balance is tougher the taller you are. Like, the higher off the ground, the more like top heavy you would feel, type of thing. Like, maybe the balance part is a little bit easier. Maybe that would count for grinds too, but getting up onto them would be harder. So how do I, like, he does a nose blunt, a handrail in that part, and it's crazy. Like, it's slow motion and everything. Like, that this is really crazy hard. If you saw someone else do that, it wouldn't be as impressive. But then other times, the stuff that he does is like equally hard as what somebody else would do. Like, it's tough to consider. And you also have to think about like how much scarier some of his stuff would be. Like, I always watch when he lands, he's grabbing onto his board kind of like this, like his front hand is on the nose. And imagine how many times he bails and like, lands and his fingers get pinched, or like how many times he's broken a finger or ripped off a fingernail or something like that. Like, the amount of difficulty and the amount of injury and pain and stuff that he probably would go through with some of that stuff. Like, that's all things that I would think about. So to me, the best way to do it would be to just watch a lot of his skating to a point where you understand better, like, what stuff he's doing is hard and what isn't. Like his standard easy stuff that he does versus his really high-end crazy stuff that he would do in a part. If it was in slow motion in his part, that gives you a good idea that that's probably really hard, because even with normal skateboarding, you always compare somebody to themselves. If you were to judge a best trick contest and P-Rod does a switch hard flip, which for him is the easy way, and then PJ Ladd does a switch hard flip, which for him is the hard way, I would say PJ Ladd would get more points, even though it's the same trick. And imagine they both did it perfectly clean, So you're always comparing a skater to himself to some degree. So I would just say getting really familiar with his skating and then just kind of doing it on instinct. Maybe sometimes the same trick for him would be a lower score, sometimes it'd be higher. For the most part, I think it'd be higher. Just seeing like how much more difficult doing some of that stuff is. All right, the last question for today is from Trav. Says, what would happen if a skater started doing freestyle tricks in a contest such as Tampa? I imagine they wouldn't get as many points, hence why they don't do it. But surely they would get some points since they are doing tricks. So they're not technically doing anything wrong, right? Maybe I just want to see more freestyle in contests. You could. The only thing is, like in a contest like at Tampa, they want to see you skate the whole park, right? Like, that's kind of what you're doing there. If you can do a trick on the quarter pipe, you can do a trick over the fun box, you can do a grind on this, handrail. If you can do stuff everywhere in the park, that is going to give you a good score. So you can't, there's no world where you do like a freestyle only flat ground routine in the middle of the park where there's like a flat spot and you get a decent score. It's not going to happen because you are not doing the main thing that they're trying to see. So like that doesn't work, but that doesn't mean you can't do some freestyle. And at that point, it really depends on what your skills are going into the contest. So like, let's say I had to compete in a street contest. For me, I think that would make sense. I would try to do one thing on everything. I would do a 50-50 grind here. I would do a kickflip over here. And then I would try to do some crazy freestyle thing at the end. But if you don't know any freestyle tricks, it doesn't make sense to try to learn some to do at the end of your line, because you want to skate around the park and then maybe you do something at the end. That's how I'm picturing it. But if you can't do any freestyle tricks, it makes more sense to just practice your street stuff and maybe upgrade those tricks, like do a front blunt instead of a front board at this part in the beginning, and then do a tray flip instead of a kick flip over here. If you could upgrade those tricks, that would be more effective, I think, than doing something weird that people haven't seen before at the end. If you happen to already have some freestyle skills, then yeah, I'm curious to see what would happen, if you do this really cool line and at the end you like pop up, you like do a Casper, and then you like flip out and you land a rail, and then you pull it back to Casper and flip out. Like, what kind of score would that bring you? I don't know. And it's again, it's one of those things like I was just talking about. That's why I grouped these, where you have to compare a skater to themselves. Like, if you've seen me do that exact combo 20 times the day before, because that's how I warm up, and it doesn't really matter to me, then I don't think it would make that big of a difference. But if that was a big risk for me and I don't really skate freestyle, but I wanted to mix things up, then it might give me a pretty big boost. It's tough to say. Like, trying to judge skateboarding in any way is incredibly difficult. How do you determine style versus technique versus trick selection versus flow versus, there's so many things that go into it. You can't really write it all out. You just have to feel it, That's kind of how I think. So that is it for now. If you have any questions you would like to see me answer, go to radratvideo.com and submit them with that form. That's right there. You can check out the shirts I have there. I also have another link in the description with this shirt particularly, and like 8 other designs on a different site that I built. But if you want to support the channel, you can sponsor me on Patreon. You can hit the join button on YouTube, or just subscribe, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and that's it. I will see you next time. Thanks for hanging out.